This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the latest research into Oregon's income disparities, a popular burger shop's opening that's causing controversy in Beaverton, and why People for Portland, the political advocacy group specializing in trolling elected officials with billboards, is calling it quits. Joining me on this week's Friday News Roundup are Oregonian business and technology reporter Mike Rogaway and our very own executive producer, John Atariani. It's Friday, October 4th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Mike, John, thank you for hanging out with me this morning.
Good morning, Claudia.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Mike, is this your first time on Friday Roundup?
Yeah, it's definitely the first time I've been on the Roundup. Yep.
Oh, cool. Well, welcome. For all of our new listeners, today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. But before we jump into the news, I usually ask an opening question so just our listeners, they can get to know our guests a little better. And today's question is related to Portland-born rapper, singer, songwriter, and now shoe designer, Amine. I don't know if you guys know Adam Amine Daniel, mostly known as Amine.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mike, do you know who I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about. My knowledge of shoes and rap are going to be very, very shallow, I'm afraid.
I'll sing you some of his songs off mic. If you weren't aware, Amine has a shoe deal with New Balance. And last year, there were billboards all over that just said, a kid from Portland got his own shoe or something like that. He also just really loves renting billboards around town and just saying random stuff. I kind of really love it. A handful of years ago, he had one that just said, yes, there are black people in Portland with his face on it. And he looked incredibly stoned. He wasn't promoting anything. He was just saying.
It's just a public service announcement.
I can only imagine like being a kid from Portland, making money, and then just being like, I'm going to rent a bunch of billboards. So anyhow, he and New Balance just came out with another shoe design. And this time, it's dedicated to his alma mater, Benson Polytechnic High School in Northeast Portland. It's a blue and orange sneaker, which I found out are like the Benson Polytech colors. It also has the school's name on the inside sole. It's really sweet. And he's also making a $25,000 donation to Benson Tech's radio program, which he credits as putting him on his musical path. He even shouts out his old teacher, who is still teaching there. I did a little research, Stephen Naganuma. So shout out, Mr. Naganuma. You helped Portland get its first international rap star. All this brings us to my opening question. So if you could partner with any Portland-based clothing or shoe company, which there are weirdly so many, who would you go with? What kind of clothing, shoe would you make, and what would be their features?
I can go first. So I think my mind immediately goes, our big sort of hometown upstart little guy doing great, this company called Nike.
I've heard of Nike.
They need some help, right? Like they've,
They're losing the running market for sure.
They're losing the running market. So I think they need new markets to expand into.
Okay. I love this.
There's a lot of different sports out there, but I think they have not yet cornered the unicycle market. So what if we did a Unipiper branded shoe that is like specifically a unicycling shoe, and all the unicyclists across the world are going to wear this like super cool Unipiper branded shoe. That's what I'd go for. Claudia's brain is broken by that one.
Mike just seems like he had something heavier in his mouth and mind, so I was going to let him spit it out.
No, I'm really stumped. You know what clothing, shoes, I'm stuck. Does Pendleton count?
Sure. I'll give you Pendleton.
All right. I'm going to go with like some kind of Pendleton woolen vest or something like that. That would be, it just, crisp morning, it just feels right.
Just a woolen vest. Are your arms never cold?
My arms are never cold. It's
just right here, just in the center.
Right. A vest works nicely.
Okay, John, what I was going to say about your submission was that all I could think of was, the Air Jordan, how there's like Michael Jordan and he has that iconic pose.
Yeah, Jumpman.
saw the Jumpman. I saw the outline of the Unipiper in these new shoes. It's just the same thing. Like, wasn't designed at all any different. It just had the Unipiper instead of Michael Jordan. And I was like, I'd wear that tomorrow. Well, awesome answers. Mine is a little, I think more, I don't want to say selfish, but it's something I want. So I would go with Columbia Sportswear, which, if you don't know, that's a Portland-born company as well. Pretty cool legacy, and is known for their durable outdoor wear. And I actually have a super talented friend who is a designer there. She also makes her own clothes. Super shout out Heather Treadway. I partner with her and try to make rainproof pants that don't look like you look like a toddler. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like that's the only thing that I don't have when I go out and it's raining. It's my pants always get wet.
Yeah. Yeah. So like fashion rain pants.
Fashion, and I feel like we haven't really tapped that market. Fashion rain pants.
You're gonna
That's
be a
all I'm
millionaire.
saying to anybody listening with power.
I love it.
That's what I would do. All right. Well, thank you guys for your answers. Mike, I'm imagining this woolen vest.
Woolen vest.
Both of yours are a lot more practical than mine.
No, but yours dared to dream, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. On to the news of the week. Mike, you're sharing a story where you dug into Oregon's income inequalities. Like, what did you find?
Yeah, so we're looking at poverty rates. And I think what happens is every year the census comes out with the American Community Survey, and they update on income and poverty for each state. And the interesting thing about Oregon is that historically we were a little to maybe considerably lower income than the nation as a whole, and our poverty rate was considerably higher. And that has moderated considerably over the last decade. You know, we used to be several points higher in the poverty rate than the U.S. as a whole. Now we're lower than the nation as a whole. And incomes are up. You know, we were one of the fastest growing incomes per household, last year. In part, we were playing catch up because we were slower to come back from the pandemic. But I think our household income's up to around a little more than $81,000 a year for the median household income. But you mentioned inequality, and that's the issue. That's another area where there is good news. Oregon's income inequality used to be really significant. Just a decade ago, white Oregonians had a poverty rate about 12 points lower than other Oregonians. Well, the income inequality, the white Oregonians' poverty rate has stayed about constant, but broadly, others have narrowed. And so now there's only like a 2 or 3 percentage point difference. So that's great. But you dig into it a little further and you see that some groups that haven't made that progress, Black Oregonians are still more than twice as likely to be poor than other Oregonians, and Latinos are several points higher than white Oregonians.
Latinos are making more money than white Oregonians?
No, poverty rate, sorry.
Okay, poverty. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to make sure okay.
Income inequality in some groups has narrowed considerably, but it hasn't in a few significant areas.
Something that I thought was interesting reading this article, Mike, and looking at some of the geographic data here, is that Multnomah County is at 12.9%, which is a lot higher than the poverty rates of the counties around Multnomah County. You know, I mean, it's like twice as much, basically, as what Clackamas County is looking at in terms of a poverty rate, which was surprising to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the map of the state overall, we think of, okay, the Portland area is wealthier than the rest of the state. And generally speaking, that's true. But when you look at the statewide map, it really looks like, you know, a quilt. You know, there's counties all over the state are doing wildly differently from one another. There's no one geographic trend of concentration when it comes to poverty rates. I think with Multnomah County, probably what we're looking at is a couple things. Number one, it's far more diverse than the counties around us, Hood River, Clackamas, Washington County. And as we talked about a moment ago, diversity, we haven't closed the poverty gap in some demographic groups. And then the other thing that's going on is that the city is a destination for people. People come looking for opportunity and they don't always find it. Mm-hmm. Now, the threshold for poverty is really low. It's $15,000 a year, and you can imagine how hard it would be to get by on $15,000. If you have a family of 4, it's $30,000 a year. You can imagine trying to house and feed a family for $30,000. So a lot of people are poor, but not technically in poverty. So This isn't a perfect measure. This doesn't say, oh, well, if you're up out of the poverty rank, you're doing all right. You're not necessarily. But it does give us a consistent benchmark year to year. They adjust every year to what that threshold is. And so we get a number that tells us something about our progress. And And it is a patchwork across the state. Just for a little more context, the highest poverty rate is Klamath County, which is about 21%.
Oh my gosh.
Down in southern Oregon. On the other hand, Crook County, next to Bend, has a high unemployment by the state measure, but a low poverty rate. It's under 8%.
I have a theory.
You tell me.
Rich retirees. Am I right? Am I
Well,
right?
I think that very well could be part of it.
Because I saw it was close to Bend, and I was like, well, Bend's getting priced out. Is everyone just going to Crook now?
Well, I think that might be. And I think that Bend's prosperity probably is starting to spill over into Crook County.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I got one right, John.
Macroeconomist Claudia Meza on the hunt.
Give me some charts. I'll read some charts. One thing that whenever I see these poverty levels and, the graphs of like, well, this is the federal and this is the state, is that I feel like I can't imagine making anywhere around that and being told, no, you're not poor. You're fine.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the most, I would feel crazy and gaslit. Part of me is like, I feel like that's emotional abuse. Like that is like so rude to tell someone who has a family of 5, they're making 30. You're like, you're fine. It's like, what? No, sir, we are not fine.
In Oregon, if you're working full time, 40 hours a week and you're making the minimum wage, you're out of poverty even if you have a family of 4. But as we were saying, it's hard to imagine that you could house or feed a family of 4 on a minimum wage on $30,000 a year. It's just a stretch. But I think the broader lesson and what we were trying to convey is that Oregon's economy has changed over the past decade. We're a wealthier state than we used to be because 2 things happened. We had sort of a young influx of young migrants who were highly educated and came here and were doing jobs that paid better. Some of the jobs followed them to some degree. And then the second thing is we had new industries like software growing here and they paying better wages. So for a certain subset of the population, Oregon is doing better. Fewer poor people, higher incomes. And that's a fundamental change in Oregon's characteristics. But I think the other point is that prosperity hasn't reached everybody. And certain groups and certain places, there hasn't been an improvement or not much of one.
Yeah, so people of color and rural areas are still hurting, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, particularly subsets of those groups. Some rural areas are doing well. Some people of color are doing well. But certain groups, no, not yet. We have more work to do.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for breaking down your data-filled article. I'm glad you did because I had so many more questions, but you just kept answering them, and I was like, "Oh, okay, okay."
Well, it's tough when a podcast. It's tough because there's graphs and then there's a map, and I'd like to be able to show it to you. But I think you have an idea. Picture the quilt with the state, and there's a real patchwork. Counties right next to each other, doing quite differently from one another.
All right. Well, let's take a break here, and when we come back, more headlines of the week. If you're a home DIYer like me, you might have some leftover paint gathering dust in your basement. But I'm happy to share that Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter, reducing waste, and helping you get back some of that much-needed storage space. First, buy the right amount of paint for the job. Paint Care has 6 questions to ask yourself when buying paint that can help ensure you have enough while minimizing waste. Second, you use up what's left. Before you break out the paintbrush and tape, see if you have any leftover paint that can save you a trip to the store. Paint Care's website also offers helpful tips for storing paint properly so it lasts for years. And third, if you still have paint, stain, or varnish left over, Paint Care makes it easy to recycle it with convenient drop-off locations as close as your local hardware store. And you can go learn more at paintcare.org/3simplerules.
Sephora stores are everywhere you are. So just pop in when you need a brown lip to match your 90s playlist, a confidence boost before your interview, or a last-minute gift for mom's birthday. There's always a Sephora near you. Just pop in. Use our store locator to find your local Sephora or Sephora at Kohl's.
Before we jump into more headlines, John and I wanted to quickly share that today is the final day of our fall membership campaign. So thank you for putting up with our soft shoeing for money all week. I'm not going to lie, John. Pitching is not one of my personal favorite things to do because it's awkward as hell. But I gotta say that it's actually been really nice to see the show of support from so many of you.
Yeah, this is something that I didn't really anticipate when we started doing a membership drive, is just that it's been so great seeing that the work that we put into this show matters to so many people. Because we have been, getting these comments from new members, from listeners to the show. Thank you so much. I thought that today, instead of just listing off the reasons that we think you should become a member, maybe we should let listeners tell you in their own words. We wanted to share a couple of those comments that we've gotten over the last few days.
Okay, so I got a super sweet one. Rick D wrote us, I'll be relocating to Portland in 2026, and CityCast Portland has become an indispensable asset to keeping informed of current events. You look at serious issues in a less than totally serious way, which is fantastic. Keep up the great work, and thanks. You guys, Rick doesn't even go here. I feel like if Rick kept pitching, maybe some of you can too. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Also, we can't wait for you to get here, Rick, because you're already my favorite. You're my favorite Rick in town. Bar none already.
Aw, number one Rick.
Number one Rick.
That's pretty impressive, though. 2 years in advance of moving here, already studying up.
Cultural investment.
Super citizen Rick, yeah.
I know.
I have one from Danielle L., also recently joined. Danielle says, I recently moved back to Portland after many years away, and CityCast Portland has been essential in helping me rediscover my favorite city, which I love. I love that people like Danielle are sort of just getting to know Portland as well and figuring out how to fold in and be a citizen and just be a part of it with us too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you to Rick and Danielle and all of the other awesome new members like Julie W., who joined the membership program because she enjoys learning about local news in this format, which is you and me talking over each other, John. She goes on, thanks especially for taking my special request to do an episode on the CEI Hub and making such an informative episode about it. And Julie is right. We actually do take requests. We're not like those, those really, you know what I mean? Even though, please don't ask DJs for requests. But, when DJs are like, no requests, no, we're totally just yeah, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want to play? What do you want us to play? What do you want? So, because this show is for you. So, of course, we want to hear about what you want us to look into.
Yeah, we take requests, and this is the tip jar, I guess.
It's so funny.
Throw $1 in.
Buy me a drink. Come on.
Buy me a drink. Come on. But seriously, if any of this has resonated with you, or what you've heard on the show over the last couple of months has sort of helped you feel more a part of Portland, it's not too late to join. Our fall membership campaign goes through today. I'd love to see 10 new members jump in today to help us finish this week strong and join up. And remember, if you do become a member, you get a bunch of perks. You get to listen to the podcast ad-free. You'll get a weekly events newsletter where we tell you all the great things going on in Portland, exclusive just for members.
We don't tell anybody else.
Just visit membership.citycast.fm and you can become a member today. That's membership.citycast.fm.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Well, and also thanks, Mike, for sitting through that whole thing. But just, Mike Broadway has been here the whole time.
Did we convince you?
Yeah, Mike, can you become a member?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sold.
Sweet.
Great.
Okay.
One
All right,
down.
back to our Friday roundup. This week, I'm looking into burgers, and I feel like I might have the most controversial topic because I have details of the possible expansion of an iconic but also kind of highly contentious California-based burger chain. And yes, I'm talking about In-N-Out. I got my info from the Oregonian, who not only broke the news, they appear to be the one media outlet most closely following the twists and turns of this deal, and which I super appreciate, seriously. So if you weren't aware, since 2020, there's been discussion at the local and state level about whether an In-N-Out should be allowed to open in Beaverton. And just this week, the project was once again given the green light. And I say once again because this process has been start-stop for a while now. Now, the issue isn't with the state because Oregon has been totally down with In-N-Out expanding up here. We already have 4 in our state. The closest one to us is actually in Kaiser, which is a town right before Salem that 5 years ago no one had ever heard of, but now most of us know is only 45 minutes away from Portland without traffic.
Where the burgers are. Yeah.
We just know. Yeah. So the issue with opening a location in Beaverton is that the actual people who live in that area are just not stoked about it. And I looked at the exact address because I was like, well, where is it, you know? And it's a spot right in front of the Uwajimaya grocery store and like right next to a Chick-fil-A. So if you know that area, you have a visual. And in just these past 2 years, that In-N-Out location has been blocked twice from progressing. Once by an independent hearing officer for some zoning stuff, but really I just think he was like reading the general vibe of the public hearing. And the second appeal just came from a single Beaverton resident who was just like, I think the fuck not. And if you're a recent Californian transplant and you're listening to this, you're probably wondering like, what's all the fuss? Like In-N-Outs spring up in California without much of a glance. It's not that deep. So let me explain the shit show that was Kaiser. What they had to deal with for like the first couple of years, not just the first few months, the first like 2 years when their In-N-Out opened up, there were lines literally a mile long, like coming straight out of the off-ramp, backing up freeway traffic for several exits. People were waiting in line for hours and hours. The citizens of Kaiser were pretty much taken hostage by a burger. So the reason I know this is because
So dramatic, Claudia.
It's true, though. I was there, John. I had to pee. It was 3 hours in a line. So anyhow, I totally see where Beaverton residents are coming from. And I don't think they're wrong. If this all goes through, it's going to suck for a handful of months. I say months because I just feel like it's not going to be as crazy as Kaiser. Like, the novelty of an In-N-Out in our area, like it was 5 years ago, is just not that high. You know, Kaiser really did take that hit for us. And also Ridgefield, Washington, which is only 30 minutes away, is also scheduled to open an In-N-Out in like 2025, you know, pretty soon. So I just don't think it's going to be the insanity like that we all saw and survived when Kaiser's opened. Mm-hmm. But before I go into more of these plans that were laid out, what do you guys think?
I have a question. So do you guys think In-N-Out's fries are terrible? I think they're terrible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%.
I do not understand the In-N-Out thing. I don't get it. I have been to California. I've eaten an In-N-Out burger. It's fine. It's fast food. And like, I would not wait in line for that. You know, anytime I see a line at an In-N-Out, it reminds me of like when you're at the airport and like the line at McDonald's is like 400 people long and like everyone just looks so sad because that's the only thing they can eat. But like there's other restaurants. You don't need to wait in line at In-N-Out. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's the scarcity. It's economics. You know, there aren't very many of them. And so, you know, it's a scarce quantity. So everybody wants it.
Economic expert Mike Rogaway.
I'm so glad Mike is here to explain that to you, John. Go on, Mike.
It's not like it's hard to find a good burger in the Portland area or in Oregon, but I'll tell you, it is a little hard to find a cheap one. I wrote an article a couple of years ago about the $15 pub burger and how we got there. And you know, beef prices were among the things that really took off during the inflation spike after the pandemic. So yeah, maybe that's what everyone wants. They've got more time than money, so they'll wait in line to get that In-N-Out burger.
It's still under $5. Like, it's cheap. It's still pretty cheap. And you want to know why? I know this. Because I didn't want to say this, you guys, but I was born and raised in LA. Don't hate me. And I actually kind of grew up pretty close to the original In-N-Out, which is in Baldwin Park, which is a suburb of East LA. And I would go there when I was a child, but I did not eat meat. So we would call it a wish burger, which is so mean. When you think about, yeah. It's now called a grilled cheese, but you first would have to say, can you believe that? That's so rude. Anyhow, the reason that the meat is so cheap, I went off on a tangent like I normally do, is that they own their own cattle ranches. Mm. And that is why they're able to keep their meat so cheap. But like, that is a big reason.
More economics.
I'm sorry, John.
God bless the good people.
John's got nothing except for hate. It's just like, man, everything I'm going to say is going to sound so spiteful. I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's interesting. You know, I sort of went down the burger wormhole, and there's a lot of burger news even beyond In-N-Out this week. Mm-hmm. So the Oregonian has their best burger poll out right now. Mm-hmm. Burgerville is on that, which like I think it was probably Michael Russell wrote a very like head scratching. I must admit, I have to wonder if y'all were just messing with me on this one. That's what he says about Burgerville. But JoJo, Killer Burger, Mid-City Smash Burger, PDX Sliders, Sure Shot, Tulip Shop Tavern, all really, really, really good burgers that you can get way quicker than waiting in line in 3 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's another reason I also don't think that Beaverton will be that crazy, as Portland already has pretty amazing burgers. And I just don't see all of Portland waiting in a 4-hour line for a burger that moved here from California.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to, you can go to that Oregonian article, which we will link, and vote for your favorite, local burger, because this list was compiled by not only Michael Russell, who added some of his own when he saw Burgerville, I'm sure, but also it's sourced from readers at the Oregonian.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you see the list, John? Were you like, oh, this is my favorite? What about you, Mike?
I'm looking at it right now, and I guess I don't have a favorite burger. Usually if I have one, I cook it myself. We have good beef in town, too. It's a result of being in Oregon. You have good options.
Yeah, Mike said we have McDonald's at home and made everyone cry. What about you, John?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, there's a lot of good burgers on this list. I think that my favorite, I'm a Tulip Shop Tavern burger guy. So Tulip Shop is halfway between my house and the airport. So that's my, I got off a flight, I'm on my way home, I stop at Tulip Shop Tavern and get, a burger on my way out home from the airport.
Oh, John, I'm so glad you said that. You fell right into my trap. Do you know what Tulip Burger was trying to emulate?
I'm
not joking. Do you know what burger they were trying to emulate?
I'm sure it was an In-N-Out burger.
The In-N-Out's burger.
God
the
bless
In-N-Out's burger, John.
And they have surpassed by leaps and bounds, and you can get it quicker than 3 hours.
Oh,
before we move on, though, Claudia, may I offer?
Sure. Move us right along. Go on, John.
May I offer a burger eulogy? So, also this week in burger news, Burger Stevens, which to my mind was one of the OG Portland smash burgers, just served their last burger. They were voted one of the best new food carts by the Oregonian in 2016, but they just closed up shop, and I've had many a delicious Burger Stevens in my life. So, Burger Stevens, thank you for the burgers. Best luck in your future ventures.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, we haven't had a eulogy on the show before. I'm glad it was for a burger, the first one. Well, thank you guys for opining on this burger controversy. We're going to take another break here, and when we return, more headlines of the week. The November 5th election is coming up sooner than you think, and City Club of Portland is here to help you learn about the local candidates and issues. On Tuesday, October 8th, join City Club at the First Congregational Church in downtown Portland for a mayoral candidate forum featuring Keith Wilson, Carmen Rubio, Lee Vostas, Mingus Maps, and Renee Gonzalez. This event is totally free, but space is limited, so registration is encouraged to save your seat and submit questions for the candidates. You can find that link at pdxcityclub.org/2024. And if you can't make it in person, you can watch recordings of this and other candidate forums at pdxcityclub.org/2024.
This is an ad for BetterHelp. Welcome to the world. Please read your personal owner's manual thoroughly. In it, you'll find simple instructions for how to interact with your fellow human beings and how to find happiness and peace of mind. Thank you, and have a nice life.
Unfortunately, life doesn't come with an owner's manual. That's why there's BetterHelp Online Therapy. Connect with a credentialed therapist by phone, video, or online chat. Visit BetterHelp.com to learn more. That's BetterHelp.com.
All right, John, what are you looking into?
I'm looking at the end of a controversial political advocacy group. This is mostly based on reporting from Julia Silverman at the Oregonian and then Courtney Vaughn at the Mercury. Talking about People for Portland. This group was founded in the summer of 2021 by a couple big deal political consultants in the Portland area. They made a really big splash. So thinking about where we were at this time, just coming out of 2020 and the protests and defund the police movement, this group started raising millions of dollars and took really aggressive stances on stuff like public safety and homelessness and city cleanliness and put up billboards, really sort of pushing some of these ideas, started running TV ads. And notably, this group did not disclose who their donors were, which led a lot of people to start saying that this was dark money trying to influence
I love that term, by
leadership.
the way.
Dark money.
I
Yeah.
love it.
But now the group's calling it quits. Its co-founders, Kevin Looper and Dan Levy, spoke with the Oregonian. They said that their mission is complete. Yeah, and I feel like for better and for worse, this has been a group that has sort of epitomized the shift in discourse in Portland over the last 5 years. What did you guys think when you saw that People for Portland is pulling the plug?
It's a weird time to do it right before the election. And I think we'll get a good sense in this wild ranked choice voting election we have in a couple months, whether their message will endure. I mean, you could end up out of these 100 so city council candidates, you could imagine any number of scenarios. And perhaps the People for Portland message will resonate, or perhaps it'll be more like 2019 Portland. I think it's just really hard to tell. It's an interesting time to be pulling back.
I just love that when the Portland Mercury inquired as to why they were shutting it down, they were like, well, it's not the state elections investigation. That had nothing to do with our decision to shut it down. And I was like, sure, Jan. Okay. Like right before an election, you're like, we did our job. Goodbye.
you want me to explain that a little bit? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, sure.
So, like I said, this group has not disclosed who their donors were. And the reason is that they registered as a nonprofit instead of a political action committee. And this has sort of been a controversial move from the very start. Basically, under campaign finance rules, if you are a political action committee, you have to disclose where the money's coming from, not so much if you're just a standard old nonprofit. And that has led to certain controversies over the years. In March of 2022, a local union sort of filed a complaint saying that People for Portland should be registered as a political entity. Then again, earlier this year, what you're referencing, Claudia, the state said that the group had violated Oregon election law, quote, by failing to file campaign finance transactions as independent expenditure filer, So they're really sort of riding this very thin line of being like, no, we are just here to like educate the public in a grassroots way, and we are not, supporting or denying any individual candidates. This is the group that put up the Portland is a Schmidt show billboard. If you remember,
a Portland classic.
If you were a classic Portland jam, they put up a billboard with the face of the district attorney, Mike Schmidt, basically calling him out and blaming Portland's woes on him. They also ran ads against officials like Metro President Lynn Peterson and like Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson, So they've been able to sort of stay in this very narrow place where they are saying that they're just a nonprofit, but then, still calling out elected officials. I don't get how they've been able to like ride that narrow ridge as long as they have.
It was very much not Portland nice. I mean, as Julia Silverman wrote in our article, they were known for sharp elbows. I mean, they were essentially trolling. But, in that same article, the pollster John Horvick from DHM Research, he said, their message was actually very close to where the majority of voters were. And, I think that may be the issue, is that it wasn't their message necessarily, as the way they were conveying it that really rankled people. That said, they got attention and maybe it was effective.
I love puns, so it really resonated with me. And also, I did not know, like that billboard, the Schmidt show, is the billboard that brought to my attention how handsome Mike Schmidt is. Like, I was like, oh, that's our DA. Like, wow. I'm like, and it was just his head. And I'm like, wow, he's so tall. Like, they gave him the most flattering photo. And like, I remember there's one of Jessica Vega Peterson. And I was like, wow, she has such a sweet smile. Like, I was like, who's grabbing these photos? There's bad photos. I know. And there is a part of me that it's like a little sad because I was like so excited to see more beautiful photos of people who live here. Like, I'm just,
Fraudia Meza. That's what
Fraudia Meza. And it's just like me looking so sweet, I don't know. I just thought that the graphic design was an interesting choice always.
If that graphic designer is now looking for work, CityCast Portland is hiring. But to your point, Mike, like, I think it is interesting looking at the issues that they have championed. Those are things that we're changing, right? Like, they really pushed for the recriminalization of the possession of hard drugs. Like, that's something that has passed. They were talking about a citywide ban on camping. It isn't being widely enforced, but that is passed. A lot of the things that, People for Portland was advocating for are policies that are taking place. And, like you said, in this election, looking at some of the candidates, I think that there are way, way, way more candidates sort of aligned with their message than there was in local elections 4 or certainly 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard for me to tell whether they were leading that charge, being a catalyst for sort of changing popular opinion, or if they were sort of trailing in the wake a little bit. It's really hard to know how much difference they make, but it's certainly true that among sort of establishment Portland, their message resonated.
Yeah, and like we said earlier that they didn't disclose their donors. Well, a handful of them came out and disclosed themselves, and these are not like small fries. We're talking about people like real estate developer Jordan Schnitzer and Greg Goodman, and then Columbia Sportswear CEO Tim Boyle.
My rain pants.
You're maybe, yeah, some heavy hitters were putting money behind this effort.
Yeah, this was not a grassroots organization. This was establishment Portland,
yeah,
for sure. That said, their message, as Horvik said, wasn't out of step with what voters were voting for or what they were saying in polls.
You're not going to do a eulogy for that billboard, John?
For the billboard?
You did one for the burger.
I don't know. Maybe it just creates an opportunity for another great, funny billboard to come up in its place. Because it was great where it was positioned, because you'd be coming like just over the bridge into downtown and the billboard would be there. I hope that as a society, we retain that place for like funny messages.
Yeah.
Because it was just like it was a good gag.
Amine, if you're listening to us, we need another billboard.
Have
Your
we got
city
the
needs
opportunity for you?
I know. Oh, man. Well, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me and going through some of the headlines of the week. Mike, it was a pleasure having you on your first Friday Roundup.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, before we sign off, just again, don't forget, today is the final day of our fall membership campaign. And if you want us to keep talking about burgers and billboards and, whatever it is that we do here, go to membership.citycast.fm. Come on, that was a good pitch. Right now to join. And if you're already a member, we love you. Thank you. We couldn't do this work without you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Seriously.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Atariani. Our producers this week are Julia Fiaioni, Anthony Luciani, and Natalie Rivera. Our Hey Portland newsletter editor is Rachel Monahan, and our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.